Hey, Ryan, can you hear me? Hello, Ryan. Okay. Hello, Ryan. Ryan, can you hear me? We are live. What is happening?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, okay. You seem frozen, man.
Do I?
Hmm? All right. Let's give it a minute. Okay, come back. Try to come back. Okay, so... Let's give a minute to Ryan to come back and we can get started. Okay, I'm gonna grab my headphones so then we can get started. Chris. What's up, Chris? You're on mute. Chris, if you hear me, you're on mute.
Yeah, hello, D. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Loud and clear. All right, and Ryan is back.
Hello.
Ryan, can you hear me now? Okay. It seems you still have some kind of connection issue. Okay. Well, without further ado, let's get started. So let me see. There we go. And I have to take this out. We good. All right, guys. Happy 2020, 2022. This is the first session we do in 2022. I kind of unofficially took January off. Just did not want to be coding or doing much. I mean, beside what I do for work. But that was about it. So nice background music, but I think my voice is nicer.
I would agree.
So what we essentially gonna talk about is publishing library to npm. If you're a JavaScript developer or not developer, you have used Node Package Manage somehow, somewhere. I mean, like, I don't see any framework or libraries that kind of not use npm. And if you're using if you use Yarn, that's the same thing. You're cheating. Yeah, but that's still npm. So why use a library in the first place? Why build a library? We build libraries usually when we have code that we want to reuse. Okay, it's kind of hard to hearing myself, so I'm just gonna do this. So we usually have this habit of trying to get like code that is reusable. So as we go into our coding journey, and that's where I feel like you start going from the level of being a junior developer to an intermediate developer, when you start to recognize, oh, okay, I'm using this pattern or I'm using this type of stuff over and over again. Can I make it faster by making it modular, or like by making it reusable? As a company too, we might have a few ways of doing certain things, and then we can lay out a foundation around like some coding conventions. Why you can have a private npm registry and have some of your codings, some things that are already bulletproof, well tested. When you start a new project, you don't have to like restart from scratch. Agencies, same thing. So anytime you can package something, it becomes like a single source of truth. And anytime it needs to be updated, it becomes very easy to go ahead and do that. So any questions around that before we get started? Have you yourself used libraries or have attempted to create one or created some? Like any question around the subject before we go into the actual building blocks for it?
No, I used libraries because I wasn't in development, and then I just recently published a couple libraries, and I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I mean, your voice is choppy today.
Darn.
This is, yeah, I think you have a bandwidth issue today. All right, so for better or worse, Chris is gonna be your spokesperson. And introducing Chris to the rest of the audience, a good friend of mine, Air Force pilot back in the days. I don't think they're gonna trust you with a plane nowadays.
Not that prestigious as Air.
Super intelligent folk, always like ready for a technical discussion. So very happy to have him as a third voice here. Feel free to jump in. It's very free form. So the format that I'm trying today is I pre-recorded the video, and basically I'm gonna go show the steps via the video, and that allows us to kind of comment over it, but that allows us to have like a very controlled like session, because a lot of people will be on their lunch break, and I don't want to keep on going over. So I want to be able in the 20-30 minutes max provide as much value as possible. Okay, so let me get that prepped up, and I will share my screen. All right, and share. The only thing though is the moment I share my screen, I won't be able to see you that much. So please communicate verbally as much as possible. Okay. And let me know if you see a big white screen with a play button on it.
I can.
Okay, good. All right. So let's go through this step by step.
It's a good animation.
We're essentially gonna be using npm as our package manager. And then here, the very first thing you want to do is go to npm and look for the name of your package if it does not exist already. So I wanted to name mine double dash, but it was already taken care. It was already taken by somebody. So I ended up calling it double dashed. Okay. So I search, there's nothing there. I have full package. At the end of this exercise, you're going to see that we have 5 packages because we're going to add a new one. So opening your VS Code, you can go into any folder in there, and we're going to create a new folder called double dashed, which is going to be the name of our library. Okay. And then in the terminal, we're going to go in there, and then we're going to run the npm quick install. That's what I call it. So npm init, and then the flag y. Okay. And I'm going to pause here, because when you do npm init y, if you don't do the flag y, it will ask you all these questions, from the name, the version, the description, and everything. So if you're gonna take the default, you're just gonna you can just like save yourself a few keystrokes by putting the flag dash y. But the thing that is important here is it intuitively like name our project after our folder. So double dashed was our folder name, and then you see that now it has created the name for double dash, and it already has a version of 1.00. You can change that if you want. Some people start a library at 0.01. We're going to talk about semantic versioning in other videos and stuff. And then those are the default for the package JSON, okay? For anything that you start with npm init y, it's probably going to be looking like this. And don't hesitate. I cannot see you guys, so if you have a question, just jump in. All right. So now the package JSON has been created with the content that we see like on the terminal. And then we're going to do a few things here, because since we're creating a library, the main entry point is going to be a dist folder that we're going to create. And then the types, because this is a TypeScript like library, the types are going to be available under that dist folder that is going to be part of the build process, and it's going to be under index.d.ts. And we're going to see more about that when we do the config file. And then the files that we have to worry about are the ones that are going to be in the dist folder. So when we're publishing the library, the files that we're going to be worrying about are going to be that. Now,
Indeed.
What we're going to do as our next step, this is a TypeScript based library. We're going to install TypeScript. Okay. So let's go ahead and install TypeScript. And then that has been added. And you can see that in our package JSON, the dependencies on line 16 have changed. And now we have the latest version of TypeScript that is added. Okay. So we have our package JSON. We need a TypeScript config file now. And that's why we had like TypeScript installed here in the first place. So here we're going to use npx and then use this command, npx tsc -- init. This is going to create like a ts config file. So for people who've been using Angular, for example, React with TypeScript, you have been exposed to the ts config file. If not, it's going to be pretty straightforward for if that's the first time you're seeing it. So what does this do for us? It created this ts config file, and it gave us like a few default, that the target is going to be ES 2016. The module system is going to be CommonJS. It's going to be strictly enforced, and so forth and so on. So these are the defaults that are there. And if you want to learn more about it, there is this this URL right there that allows you to learn more about it. I highly recommend it. But let's open the ts config file. And when we open the ts config file, it's a JSON configuration object, but it has a lot of commented out code. These are like hundreds of possibilities that you can use, but depending on what you're going to do. For example, you see here JSX import source on line 21 or React namespace. We're not going to need any of that, but that's just to show you that all of those things are like available when you are putting together a config file, a config JSON, ts config JSON. So what we're going to do, that was just to do the shortcut. What we're going to do now is we're going to take all of that out, basically. So yeah, that's a lot of options that are possible when you are creating like this type of config. Now we're going to just take all of that out and we're going to create a brand new compiler option. Now in that compiler option, we're going to get back to the module, and the module, we're going to just use the CommonJS module system. We can talk about the different ones and why we're using CommonJS, but it's the most common one. The target, and when we say target here, is like how our files are going to be compiled out, and they're going to be compatible with like the ES 2015, this comes from like the ECMAScript, how you call it, I don't want to say schema, that's not the right word, but the code is going to be compatible with the ES 2015 recommendation, so that's what the target is. Now the next step is you can put your source map through. I highly recommend to have your source map through because your code is going to be compiled to JavaScript. And then most of the time too, it's going to be minified if we were to put that out. And then if you were to debug your code and want to be going back to the source of like the original code, the source map will help you in there in your debugging tools like Google Developer Tool or something like that. So that's why we will put that there. And then the output directory here, as we did in the package JSON, we're saying that our output directory is going to be the dist folder. Okay. So in doing that, two things are going to happen though. It's going to put like all the converted TypeScript files into JavaScript, into that dist folder. But at the same time, the typings that I talked about a little earlier, that are good for IntelliSense and then auto-completion and all that kind of stuff, the index.d.ts file will know that, okay, I'm going to be putting it inside like that dist folder. That's why it's very important. And then here, no implicit any. So that's good, because if we are in TypeScript, we are trying to enforce like the typings and then have proper typings. So it's kind of counterproductive to have a TypeScript library and then just allowing any everywhere. We can talk about typings in another session. That's not what this one is about for today. Okay, let's go to the next. What do we have? Declaration true. The declaration true is the most important piece of config here when you are doing a library. Okay, this is the one that triggers and say like this needs to be treated as a package basically. You can find out more about it, but it is very important. Out of all these setups, if you're going to distribute this as a npm or as a package, the declaration true has to be present. Okay. What else? So we're done with the compiler options. Now we're going to say what needs to be included in the published version of our library. So now we're going to say find everything that is in the source folder basically, and then just include that. But don't worry about anything that is under node modules. Okay, because people who are going to be using the library are probably going to just install it. So we don't need to have node modules as part of the distribution. So this is our basic config right now. We have a double dashed folder, which is the name of our library, a package JSON, and a package lock. The package lock JSON has been built afterwards. And then the TS config that has all the configuration. This is the minimal amount of configuration that you need. And the most important part is having that declaration true. Okay. Our directory is important too, because we connected with our package JSON when we talked about the output directory in there. All right. So are you guys following so far? Any questions yet?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, because I tried to ask a question earlier. But so remember when you had the default parameters for the TS config file?
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, all the properties that you added here, were those already present in the TS config? In the default?
Yes. Most of them were already here.
Okay.
So you will have, for example, the target there, the module, and then where there is like a 50-50 possibility, it will just comment it and show you what it might be.
I mean, I know the default was really large, right?
Yeah.
So I was just curious if everything you added back was already there somewhere. Okay.
It was already there, and it was just easier to just select all and delete it. But if you remember, the default it showed on the right are almost the same as the ones that I have here.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just about reading the documentation, understanding what each does, and that's a very, very long list, like you said. But if you're doing a configuring for React, there are things that are specific to that. If you're doing something for Node, there are something specific. So yeah, so you can find your segment pretty quickly and tweak those values.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Anything else?
This is pretty straightforward.
All right. So
You made it
we
really
have
simple.
our configure. Yeah. Our configuration set up. Now we're gonna put our source folder. And here, what I did, just for the sake of time, I put the files that are going to be in our library, because the goal was not to build the files, but to build a library. Okay. So we have a source folder, and a source folder, and then basically what I've been mimicking here is what I call a no dash library. Punt intended here because we have a low dash library, and there's a lot of the how I call it, a lot of the methods that we have in Lodash that now we can just build directly with JavaScript. Since ES6, we might not need some of you might not need to download the whole Lodash library just to have some of those methods. So that's a very good like example for this. But the thing that is important for our library building exercise is we have created a source folder, and if you see in the tsconfig on line 10, we are saying target everything that is inside the source folder. So however you set up your config, make sure that your target folder is present like inside your project. That's just common sense right there. Okay, so our source folder has a subfolder in it called array, and then in array we have a chunk.ts and a compact.ts and an index.ts file. So what are those basically? So the chunk.ts is like a method that allows you to take an array and then segment it in chunks. So basically the documentation here shows you that if you had, it takes two parameters, the first one being the array, and then the second one is how many chunks of it do you want. So if you look on line 8, if we call the function, it will give us the result on line 9. The last part, if it doesn't have enough chunks, it will just take whatever is left. Okay, so and we have kind of like a naming convention. Since I call it double dashed, I just use two underscores. I could have used two dash, but there's a whole history between low dash and underscore, so I'm using two underscores before the name. So that's like on line 15, and every single method that is going to be in this library is going to follow the same structure. Okay, so real quick, let me respond to this. And now that's for chunk ts. Okay, let's see. Okay, you can go faster, buddy. And then very important, on line 25 we are doing what is called a named import. Okay, so that will allow us, when we are importing this library, to be able to import only this method if we wanted to, which is going to be because imagine if we had a library with hundreds of methods, and then just to use chunk we end up using the entire library. That's not very efficient. But having it this way, we can import the library but when it's time to use it, we can just import exactly the pieces that we want. And with tooling like Webpack and stuff, they can look at that and say, oh, he has the entire library, but he's only using 1% of it. So we're just going to tree shake the rest of it, and we're just going to pick out exactly what's needed. So this is very important to underline here. Now, that's for chunk. And compact, you can read more about it if you wanted to. And basically, let's just say now, in my index.ts file, I'm exposing these two methods, to be exportable. So here I have export chunk from chunk and export compact. Now that allows, since it's in the index, I can just import array and then import those different methods. Okay. So, but imagine in a real library, you might have hundreds of methods. Now I'm creating an index.txt file, but at the root of source, which is different. you know, it's very subtle. In my library, if I was to segment my methods that have to do with array, all the array method will be under the array folder. And then I will do the same thing with objects. I will have a second one. But now at the root level, I will have like a different index file that allows me to export only the array folder now. Okay. This is just structure. This is just like how you organize code. That doesn't have anything to do necessarily with like the library publishing, but that's just good to know. So that's at least how I keep myself like organized. Okay. So now the thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go inside of the package in my terminal here. Okay. I want to make sure that I'm in double dash, but I see that the source folder is outside. So make sure that your source folder is inside your project. So that was like a little mishap for me. So at least now I have moved it. It should be inside of your project. So don't make that kind of mistake. Okay. So here we are just double checking that it's in the right place. Okay. Now let's go ahead and run npx tsc. So npx tsc, what it does inside our project, it will take our TypeScript files, because all of these files are in TypeScript right now. But when we distribute them, we need to distribute them in JavaScript format. Okay. So now running this is going to compile our TypeScript files into JavaScript. Okay. There you go. And now what happened? You see that the dist folder that we mentioned in the package and the tsconfig file has been created. Okay. So by running npx tsc, we have compiled now all of our TypeScript files to JavaScript, but it has read the config value that we have in the tsconfig file to create this folder and publish them in there. That's why that configuration was important. Okay. Now inside the this folder, you see that we have the same structure, but look at the things that have been created. We have chunkd.ts, which is the typings for chunk. We have chunk.js, which is the compiled version of our chunk.ts. And we have chunk.js.map, because in our tsconfig, we said that source map would be true. So this is responding exactly to the way that we have configured it in our tsconfig. Okay. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. And I think we're doing good in time. So now let's look at the converted JS file. And you see that at the top, since we said that we were going to use ES 2015, that's why you're seeing this use strict object defined properties, because it's following the common JS. So that's how it's going to render now the JavaScript. And every browser that is compatible with like the 2015 definition would be able to read this file without a problem. Okay. All right. Now let's keep going. We have set up the library and everything. Now we need to log in into npm, because we want to publish to npm. Okay. So I'm assuming that, well, I should not assume, but you should go to npm and create a login. Basically it's free, so just create a login. Now we're going to log in into npm via our terminal, and you will use your username, your password, and your public email that you are using in npm. Okay. And I have like a 2-factor authentication, so I use that, and then that's the number it gave me back. And now I'm logged in. in npm. Now all I need to do is npm publish. Okay, and then when I run npm publish, you see that on the second line, it's going to publish double dashed at version 1.00, and it's showing you all the contents of what is going to be in there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And now at the end, it tells you plus. If you see a plus double dash at 1.00, now your library is finally part of the public npm registry.
Exciting.
Yeah. And when we come here and we refresh, now I have 5 packages, and you see that double dash has been published by adding a few seconds ago. Pretty exciting. I mean, I still have like goosebumps whenever I see one of my packages up there, even though even that's just for demo purpose. Okay, now we have a package published in npm, but what good that does it give us if we cannot consume it? So let's see now how to take that package and like use it. All right, so let's create a new test folder. And here I'm going to create an app.ts. What else? If you're not speaking, can you mute yourself? I think I'm getting a little background. There you go. Now we go with install double dashed. You see here now I'm just going to say in my new folder, just npm install double dash. What it's going to do is going to go to the public registry of npm and see if there's a package there called double dash to be able to install it. Okay, since our package is public, we should be able just to install it like this. I mean, you can try it right now if you have like your IDE open, and it will install double dash in your and you see it has added 2 packages, audited 3, found 0 vulnerabilities. Now if we open test, we will see that there's a node module folder. The app.ts we have created ourselves, but it has created a package JSON for us and a package lock.json. And you see inside the node module, we have double dashed. But double dash has a dependency on TypeScript. That's why it has added TypeScript as a dependency. Because if you remember, when we were creating our project, we added TypeScript as one of our dependencies. So it's like following that as a map. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
So, yes.
Yeah, I have. When you were talking about you put TypeScript as a dependency way in the very beginning, but I want to save that question for the very end. It's like, well, what else? What other kind of things can you put in the library that are not TypeScript? That was the question, but let's save that to the end.
Okay.
All right.
Fair enough. All right. Now we see that we have our double dashed library installed in this project. Let's use it. So now what we're going to do, we're going to import from double dashed. And you remember when we used and look at it. Let's go back a little here. That's very important. So from double dashed. And when I start typing the underscores, you see that the IntelliSense, this is coming from the .ts files that are in the this folder. The IntelliSense comes in, and then it starts showing me the options that I have for the name import that I had in my library, the setup that I had. That's where it's paying off. You're making it very easy and very intuitive for people who are going to consume your library to not make like, any mistake here. All right. That's why it was important. Okay, let's keep going. Now I can import chunk and I can import compact. I can import both. I can import one, so now let me use it. And I'm going to create an array. Okay, if I know how to count. And I'm going to log. Now I'm going to use the chunk method that takes an array. And you see the IntelliSense is working. You see, the IntelliSense is telling me the documentation that I created for my method, that's what's appearing now in here. The length of each chunk, and then the documentation creates an array of elements split into group. This is what I have put into the documentation of when I was creating this method. So if you're going to be a library author, this might seem not because you will say I'm creating it for myself first, but even for yourself, when you come back, you might want to have like this level of documentation to know what it does, how you use it, and what is a good example of how it's being used. That's the added value, because at the end of the day, you're saving yourself time and you're saving anybody else who's going to be using this library time. Okay. So that's where the due diligence is. That's like, pretty much, I would say the etiquette you have to have around when you are publishing something that is going to be consumed by others. All right. So now I'm saying I'm going to use the chunk method in the double dash library. I'm passing it my array and I want it to cut it into chunks of 4. Okay. So if this works out, basically, let's see the commented out expected result is going to give me an array of arrays with like 1, 2, 3, 4 as my first chunk, 5, 6, 7, 8 as my second chunk, and whatever's left, because it doesn't have 4 left, 9 and 10 as my third chunk, if it works out. So remember, this is mimicking, this is just faking somebody else using your library, and in matter of seconds being able to have that functionality at their fingertips. So now let's use TS Node here for our app TS, and you see it logged out the expected result. So we were able to call in double dash as a public package that is now part of the npm registry and use it inside of our new project. Okay. Now, any questions before we? Because we have about 3 to 5 minutes.
Easy, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, I don't want to block you out. Do you have any questions, Ryan?
No, go ahead.
All right.
What do you have?
Ryan, I probably don't know this code as well as you. I'm not an Angular guy, but hey, on the import statement, if let's say you know that you're going to use almost everything in that particular library, how do you just say a library? Do you just say import asterisk from double dash, or what do you say?
Yeah. So if you were gonna use everything,
Or
you would do something like let me do this. Okay. Let's see. put it on the desktop right now. That's just for the sake of. So you would do import all, and you could give it an alias as, I would say dd, for example, from double dash.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when I do that, when it's time to use it, I would say console.log dd that. And then at that moment, I will use the methods that are in,
Oh, yeah, you
chunk.
give it an alias. Okay.
Yeah. So dd that. So now this alias is gonna act as an object that englobes every single method in double dash. And now I can do something like this and pass in the arguments that is expecting. Okay. And it's just like doing red because I have not imported that. But that's just to show you the syntax. Okay. Any
Okay.
other question? All right. So we are at time. I want to finish around 45. There is more. For example, as you are doing this, every single time you run npm publish, it's going to publish a new version. So there is a way to make sure that you can develop locally before doing that. And that's by using npm link. We're not going to have time to show that today. But in the meantime, if you are interested, this video is available on my channel at YouTube. It's just youtube.com addingom, ADYNGOM. And when you get here, there is how to write and publish your first TypeScript library. And we did all the steps up to here, basically, which is minute 9. And the rest is going to show you how to link your library, how to do local development before publishing again. Okay. So highly recommend, if you are interested to know more, to go to ADYNGOM on YouTube. You can subscribe there. You can like get the notification, but look for this particular video, and it will give you the second part. What we can do is next Wednesday we can pick up from here and then talk more about this publishing and then the linking in the meantime. But we'll decide if that's what we're gonna bounce on next Wednesday, because we have a lot of things to cover this year, a lot of things in React, a lot of things in Angular, so we still deciding on like the calendar, but we'll see. Let us know in the comments, in social media and stuff, if you want us to keep going on this one, or we could just, if you have enough information, we can just bounce on some other stuff. Cool. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Thanks for
So
this,
I can see
making the
my
video.
wonderful guest right there. Any reaction, any questions?
You did a pretty good job. Having trying to figure this out myself, I ran into a lot of problems, and you just made it so easy. I actually looked at your video and found it very helpful. I wish I had seen it before I tried to, do all this myself, but you made it pretty approachable. So thank you for that.
Cool. Thanks for that comment. And Chris, what about this format though? Having the video ready and going step by step. Isn't it more, is it more productive this way than trying to do live coding?
Wow, it was pretty seamless. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, nice.
I didn't realize you played a video within this. I was, you know what? That right there, I thought you were live. Never mind. I did watch the video before, by the way.
Man, if I can code that flawlessly
Yeah,
and without a oh man.
Hey,
I
you
didn't
deserve a
realize
Turing Award for that.
I didn't. And I
that
watched the
would
video.
be something.
I did watch the video. I didn't try the code yet because I wasn't at that level of code for Angular. I'm learning Angular from the beginner point of view, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, we'll get more into Angular specific. This one is
Right.
pretty general. This is one where you could use it in any other project, so but we will get into like some more specific Angular as we go.
What would you publish that's not TypeScript? If it's a node
What's that?
package, what would you publish to the library that would not be TypeScript?
Oh yeah, so TypeScript here is used as a dependency.
No,
But if I was to use, let's say I was doing a mass-based library, I don't have to reinvent the wheel if there's already like, a few like mat packages that are available. I will just add them as dependencies to my library.
So you mean that library would depend on stuff in the library already? What you're adding would depend on what's been added to the library already.
Yeah, yeah.
And
If I find, because the part that I write, is the part that is unique enough to be published as a library. So the thing is, but in writing that doesn't mean that I have to write everything from scratch. If I already have a function that is doing Fibonacci pretty well, I don't have to create a Fibonacci function from scratch.
But would it be?
Or if I have another package that is doing, I don't know, numerals versus like the different metric systems, I'm not going to try to go and create that from scratch. There's already a package that is going to be. Now, all I have to say is that for my library to work, I have a hard dependency on this other package.
But would it be dot something different than TS? Dot.
What's that? No. It's just because I'm okay. There's two things though.
You put
I'm using TypeScript as like a language, and I'm using TypeScript as a package. So when I'm using the part where I'm using TypeScript as a language, that's why I'm using the .ts files, And now when the library get compiled using the tsc command, so there's two things here. So since I'm going to be using TypeScript to do compiling and everything like that, I'm adding it to my project because I'm going to be using TypeScript files. But you could have an entire library being JavaScript, for example. But the thing is, you're going to have to do a lot of tweakings for the module system, the import, export, and everything like that. So it's usually easier to just do it in TypeScript and have TypeScript converted to JavaScript.
Yeah, I'd have to go back to the code. Okay, I think I got all that. I'm just
all right.
There's a situation where it wouldn't be .ts.
It depends on your library. Your library doesn't have to be TypeScript. You can publish as long as I think that you have JS file at the end of the day that people can consume, then I think you're pretty much all right. But I've seen like many other types of libraries that are available.
ES-build bundles and Go binaries.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah. Okay. And you have to have a clear contract about what you want your library to do, not only for yourself. And then when you are about to publish it, there's this other side of having a good documentation around it. Have a good README, that file, having good examples, having a GitHub like resource, a GitHub repo and everything. What you really want is, if you're going to make people consume your library, it has to be very intuitive from the get-go. A lot of projects get abandoned because people don't have the time to figure out what it does. It has to be very obvious, very easy to consume, use names that are very intuitive, use examples that are very very descriptive. But the moment it starts to become like cryptic and stuff, people are like, I don't have time for this, I'm gonna find something else, you know. So that's just the reality of it. All right, guys, I think we are time. Let's make sure we are here next Wednesday around the same time, and we'll have another topic, and it's just gonna be as, you know, chill as this, and hopefully we get to learn something all together. And don't hesitate to propose. Ryan, thank you for giving me a list to propose, like subjects that we're going to be talking about, but mainly we're going to be around web development, mobile development, and all the frameworks that are, like, you know, involved in that. Cool. All right, guys, thank you for your time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.